Hi, fourth graders. We were reading Ribsy and we did not finish. And poor Ribsy is still stuck inside that apartment building. Let's see if we can get him out and back to Henry. Let's see. So there was an elevator and Ribsy's out and on the apartment floor somewhere. Ribsy felt confused. He was even more confused when he heard a whispered, "Psst." It was Larry, who was supposed to be down below, but was somehow now up above. While Ribsy had walked down to the second floor, Larry had ridden up to the third on the elevator. "Woof," answered Ribsy, who wanted to get out of this place. "Shh!" Larry's worried face appeared in the stairwell above Ribsy. He came tiptoeing down the steps. "I've got to get you out of here," he whispered. "Come on." He started to lead Ribsy on down the steps when the door of the manager's apartment opened on the first floor. "Thank you, Mrs. Berg," the manager was saying. "We can't go down that way," whispered Larry. "Come on, this way." Ribsy obeyed because he did not know where to go by himself and because he wanted to stay away from the woman with the angry voice. Larry led him down the hall and toward the back stairs, which were near the window with the sign over it. He was about to start down with Ribsy when he heard someone coming up. "I don't know who it is, but I'm not taking any chances," Larry muttered, looking around wildly. He saw the window at the end of the hall and opened it. Ribsy found himself being picked up, thrust through the window, and dropped onto the fire escape. The window was closed behind him and a curtain pulled. Ribsy's feet slid down through the metal bars of the fire escape and stuck down into an empty space. If the elevator was a strange place, a fire escape was much, much worse. Ribsy felt as if he should be falling, but instead, there he hung in midair. Inside, he heard the manager's angry voice, which made him feel as if he had done something he should not, but he could not understand what it was. Silently, he struggled to get all four of his feet up onto the metal bars of the fire escape. Ribsy soon discovered that a fire escape was not only frightening, it was uncomfortable. He had to move his feet carefully on the cold metal or they would slip through. It made him uneasy to see the ground so far below him. There was an opening in the fire escape big enough to jump through, but the ground was too far down. Since Ribsy could not go down, he did the next best thing. He went up. Because he was an optimistic dog, he hoped things might be better up there. He climbed up cautiously, one step on the steep, slanting ladder at a time. Unfortunately, when he reached the next level of the fire escape, things got worse. The good, solid ground was farther away. Ribsy peered into the window, but the third-floor hall was still empty. With his tail drooping, Ribsy looked around. The view was better, but there was nothing a dog would be glad to see, only some old fenders and wrecked cars behind the fender and body shop below. He could look out over the roof of the shop and see the cars and buses on the busy street on the other side of the block. He tried whimpering at the window, but no one came. He gave an experimental bark, but there was so much banging in the body and fender shop that no one heard him. Bewildered and frightened, Ribsy lay down on the fire escape as best he could. The cold metal bars pressed into his body, and the breezes blew under as well as over him. Nothing was comfortable. Nothing was familiar. He felt more lost than he had ever felt before. There was nothing to do but lie there on the fire escape, watching the traffic and listening to the banging in the body and fender shop, and wait for things to get better. A half-hour went by, and then an hour. Larry did not come back, and the building was silent because the apartments overlooking the body and fender shop were rented to people who were out all day and did not have to listen to all the noise. Ribsy grew cold and stiff. His body hurt from the iron bars that pressed into him. Things were not getting any better. Ribsy would have to do something. Ribsy got up and managed to shake himself without having his feet slip through the fire escape. Cautiously, he put one forepaw and then the other on the window ledge once more and whimpered at the empty hall. The doors remained closed. No rescuer appeared. Ribsy became impatient. He barked. Still, no one came to rescue him. No one cared about the dog on the fire escape. He was forgotten. Ribsy turned around carefully and barked through the railing toward the traffic on the next street. The only answer he got was the banging in the body and fender shop below. Ribsy walked gingerly around the fire escape to make sure he had not missed a way out. There were only the ladder-like steps, and while he had not minded climbing up, they were much too steep to go down. Ribsy became frantic. He felt as if the whole world had gone off and left him. He barked and barked and barked. There must be somebody someplace who would come and get him off this thing. And there was somebody. Somebody way down on the next street. Ribsy! It was Henry Huggins' voice coming from the new station wagon, which was moving along with the rest of traffic. Ribsy! Henry had his head out of the window and was pointing up at the fire escape. At the sound of the voice he loved, Ribsy went wild. He barked until he was hoarse. In his excitement, his hind feet slipped through the fire escape. Terrified lest he fall through, he scrambled frantically to regain his footing on the metal bars. When his feet were planted safely once more, there was no sign of Henry any place. This terrified Ribsy even more. Henry had gone off and left him again. He barked so hoarsely and so wildly that even the body and fender men heard him. One of them came to the back door of the shop and looked up at the dog on the fire escape. Well, I'll be doggoned, he said, pushing his greasy cap back on his head. How do you get up there? Ribsy whimpered anxiously. He felt better just having someone speak to him. Hey, Bert, the body and fender men called to someone in the shop. There's a dog on the fire escape. No kidding. Bert appeared and looked up at Ribsy. Well, what do you know? How do you suppose he got up there? Ribsy tried to tell the men that he had to get down, that he had to run down the street and find Henry Huggins before he got so far away he could never find him again. What do you think we should do? Asked the body and fender men. Bert shrugged. Probably some kid put him there. Most likely it was Larry. He'll probably get him down again. Yeah, I guess you're right. The two men knew Larry, who often came into the shop to admire the wrecked cars. Suddenly, Ribsy saw Henry Huggins appear from the side of the building. Ribsy, the boy shouted, I found you! This time, Ribsy barked for joy at the sight of the boy down below. Funny place to lose a dog, remarked the body and fender man. I didn't lose him there, explained Henry, his eyes on the dog. I lost him a month ago at the shopping center. Then what's he doing up there? The man asked. Search me, said Henry. All that really mattered was that he had found his dog at last. All I know is that I was talking to him on the telephone, and he started running, and nobody saw him after that. The two men looked at each other, shook their heads, and turned to go back into the shop. One of them said something that sounded like, Poor kid, too much TV. The other said, yeah, my boy watches those talking animals programs too, but he's too smart to believe 'em. Next, Ribsy saw Henry's mother and father come around the corner of the apartment house. I finally found a parking space, remarked Mr. Huggins, and looked up at Ribsy. Hello there, fellow. Ribsy made eager, anxious noises. Surely his family would not go off and leave him here. See, Dad, said Henry, I told you if we just drove around this neighborhood, we were sure to find him. I told you he couldn't be too far from that Joe's house. You were right, Henry, said his mother, and now we don't have to argue with that boy Joe about who owns him. How on earth do you suppose he got up there? Ribsy whimpered again to remind Henry he would like to get off this thing. What worries me is how we're going to get him down, said Henry. By this time, Larry Biggerstaff arrived. He had been sitting on the front steps worrying about how he was going to get rid of the dog when he had noticed 3 people hurry down the side of his apartment building and had overheard the words dog and fire escape. "That's easy," Mr. Huggins was saying. "I'll just go and ring that bell and tell the manager we want our dog back." "Please don't do that," begged Larry, bursting into the conversation. "The dog isn't supposed to be there, and I'll catch it if the manager finds out about him. She might even evict me and my mother, like she always says she's going to do." Ribsy barked to remind the people below that he was still up here. "Shh," hissed Larry. "I don't get it," said Henry. "What's he doing up there?" "Well, I was playing out front with this old tennis ball I have." From the way Larry spoke of the tennis ball, it was easy to tell he did not think much of it. This dog came along and wanted to chase it. And, well, I started to thinking he might be hungry, so I started to take him inside, and the manager started chasing me, and I shoved him out onto the fire escape to hide him. And, well, I've been sitting out on the front steps trying to figure out how I was going to get rid of him without the manager seeing me. "I see," said Mr. Huggins. "Well, you just get him down," said Henry. "Fast." "Now, Henry," said his mother. "I didn't put him on the 3rd floor," said Larry. As if this helped the situation, "I put him on the 2nd, and he climbed up to the 3rd. Ribsy was so eager to get down, he put a paw on the ladder-like steps. He could not do it. They were too steep. He was afraid. "We seem to have a problem," said Mr. Huggins, looking up at the dog on the fire escape. "Maybe you could boost me up to that little ladder that sticks down from the bottom part, and then I could climb up and carry him down," offered Larry, who was glad someone had come to help him with his problem. "Oh, no," said Mrs. Huggins hastily. "We couldn't let you climb down those steps with the dog. You might slip." Ribsy could not be patient any longer. He put his paw on the top step again. "Maybe we could call the fire department, and they could bring a net, and he could jump," suggested Henry. "Don't do that. Please don't do that," Larry objected strenuously. "The manager really gets excited when she sees a fire engine in front of the building." Ribsy was beginning to think the people below had forgotten all about him. He put a 2nd paw on the steps. He wanted so much to get down. He wanted to feel Henry petting him again and to lick his face. Even though he was afraid, he was going to try. "This is ridiculous," said Mr. Huggins. "I'll just go in the back door and up the back stairs and bring him through the window." "And have someone mistake you for a burglar?" said Mrs. Huggins. "Oh, no." "You go," Henry said to Larry. "You got him up there." Larry looked frightened. "The manager might catch me." "Then I'll go," said Henry. Ribsy reached for the 2nd step at the same time brought his hind feet down to the top step. "No, you won't," said Henry's mother. "You can't go roaming around this strange building." "We can't just leave him," Henry began. Ribsy had started down the steep steps. It was too late to turn back now, even if he wanted to, and he did not want to. He found himself coming down the steps faster than expected. The metal was slippery to his paws. Halfway down, he slipped and tumbled, yelping, to the bottom, and there he was with his feet dangling in space again. "Hey, look!" Henry pointed, unnecessarily. Everyone was looking at Ribsy. "He got down by himself. That proves he wants to come home to us." Ribsy picked himself up and scrambled around, trying to find places to set his feet. "Did you hurt yourself, Ribsy?" Henry asked. Ribsy managed to set his feet on the slats of the fire escape. "Woof," he said, and wagged his tail to show that he was still all right. "Smart dog, Ribsy," said Henry. "Now how do we get him down from there?" The 2 men from the body and fender shop came out at once more to see what all the commotion was about. "I hear that dog talks on the telephone," remarked Bert. "He did once," said Mr. Huggins absent-mindedly. He was wondering how they were going to get Ribsy down to the ground. The 2 men exchanged a glance. "There's a ladder in the shop that should reach almost to the bottom of the fire escape," one of them said. "I'll get it." He returned in a moment with the paint-spattered step ladder, which he set up under the fire escape. It almost reached the metal ladder that extended down from the fire escape. "I'll go, Dad," said Henry, eager to get his hands on his dog again. "You better let me go," said his father, mounting the stepladder. With help so near, Ribsy barked joyfully. "Shh!" hissed Larry. Mr. Huggins climbed the stepladder and then the short ladder that was part of the fire escape. He crawled through the opening in the lower level of the fire escape and picked up Ribsy. "Hold still, boy," he said, as Ribsy gratefully tried to lick his face. "You'll fall," worried Mrs. Huggins. "You can't possibly climb down the fire escape ladder and the step ladder with a dog." "Don't drop him," begged Henry. "I'm afraid that's what I will have to do," said Mr. Huggins. "Go ahead," said one of the body and fender men. "We'll catch him." Ribsy felt himself being lifted up over the railing of the fire escape, and then he experienced a terrible moment of panic as he fell through the air. Suddenly, everything was all right. 4 strong hands caught him. Ribsy wriggled out from the grasp of the body and fender men and sprang into Henry's arms, where he licked Henry's face for joy. "Ribsy," said Henry. "Ribsy, old boy." He put the dog down at last, and Ribsy was so happy he waggled all over. Henry sank to his knees and hugged his dog. "Whew, that's a relief," said Larry. Mr. Huggins reached into his pocket and brought out his wallet. "I think part of the reward money should be yours," he said to Larry. "What for?" Larry looked suspiciously at Henry's father, as if he thought he might be joking. "I didn't do nothing." "You put him up where we could see him," said Mr. Huggins, and held out 3 $1 bills. "If you hadn't put him up on the fire escape, we could have driven around all day without seeing him." Larry looked doubtfully at the bills. "Sure," said Henry. He put him up there in plain sight. Larry took the 3 bills. "Thanks, I can buy a good ball with this." He grinned at Mr. Huggins and at Henry. Then he patted Ribsy. Ribsy was so happy he wriggled all over for Larry, too. "And now I think we better go home before Larry's manager catches us," said Mr. Huggins, as the men took down the ladder and carried it into the body and fender shop. "I wonder if the dog knows how to dial the telephone, too," remarked Bert. "If he does, he ought to be on TV," answered the other men. Henry, his parents, and Larry walked along the side of the apartment house with Ribsy bounding along beside them. In front of the building, they ran right into Mrs. Creech, who was sweeping the front steps. "I knew you had a dog, Larry Biggerstaff," she said triumphantly. "Wait till I talk to your mother about this." "There must be some mistake," said Mr. Huggins politely. "This is our dog. He never belonged to Larry." "But—" began Mrs. Creech. "No," said Mr. Huggins firmly. "The dog is ours, and he has been for several years. We just misplaced him for a little while." Mrs. Creech did not know what to say, so she went back to sweeping the steps. Henry opened the door of the station wagon, which still smelled like a new car. "Hop in," he said to Ribsy. Ribsy accepted the invitation. He jumped in and settled himself on the seat. This time he knew he was welcome. Henry climbed in beside him. He picked up the leather collar, which was lying on the seat, and fastened it around Ribsy's neck. Ribsy thumped his tail on the upholstery. Mrs. Huggins smiled at Ribsy and did not say a word. Ribsy could ride in the new station wagon all he wanted. The end. Thank you for listening. I hope you're having a great week. Bye.